Okay, good evening, everyone. Wow, a couple quick things. I have to stand behind a microphone, which for me is very, very unnatural. But it's to make the recording work. Just a couple really quick things. Please turn off your telephones, or at least put it on silent. You're gonna see a lot of films, I think, that hopefully a phone would be, you wouldn't hear a phone in there anyways. But it'd be great if everyone could turn off their phones. Oh, the biggest announcement, that's right. I had two announcements. The minor announcement was the telephone. The slightly more major announcement was this amazing book that they've produced, yeah? That, as Liam said, or I was kind of enchanted by when I opened it a couple of minutes ago, it has these wonderful little magnetic bits that just close the top beautifully, yeah? And like Liam said, boom. And they are magnificent. There are six extraordinary books of six extraordinary trips that Liam and Kate have taken with, oh my goodness, with a whole group of people, students, professionals of every type. They're going to talk about those six. So the lecture tonight is structured around the six books in this extraordinary collection, which arrived, about an hour ago. And most finally, and absolutely not to be forgotten, because when you walk out of this room this evening, all you have to do is walk a few steps out and across the hall to an exhibition of the work that's in this book. So you have a kind of extraordinary combination this evening of exhibition, book, and lecture, which is, that's a great trio for this evening. I'm not going to say much more except that these are two very, very well, you're not old at all, but two very dear old and dear friends, absolutely extraordinary friends. I was teaching in the school for a couple of years before Liam and Kate arrived. We've grown up together here in so many ways, largely about how to manage budgets, but in so many other ways as well. I regard them as absolutely dear friends, but as also extraordinary architects, thinkers, creators. God, I mean, what you guys don't do, it's hard to describe. I'm delighted that they've moved from running a diploma unit, which they've run for about the last, 7 years? 5, 6, 7 years?
7, I think, 8.
7, 8 years, and they've now moved over into the visiting school on a kind of more full-time basis and are actually building their programs now through the visiting school, which I run, which for me is a absolutely tremendous reward, really, guys, and thank you a million for that. So they're going to continue to go on these extraordinary journeys that they take, but there's a point to these journeys, and I think that's what they will really elucidate and articulate this evening. So Liam Young and Kate Davies, welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
So Unknown Fields is a nomadic design studio that ventures out on expeditions into the shadows cast by the contemporary city to uncover the alternative worlds, alien landscapes, industrial ecologies, and precarious wilderness that's set in motion by the very powerful push and pull of the city's desires.
The dislocated landscapes we survey, the iconic and the ignored, the excavated, irradiated, and the pristine, are connected to our everyday lives in surprising and complicated ways. They're embedded in global systems that form a vast network of elusive tendrils, twisting thread-like over everything around us, crisscrossing the planet, connecting the mundane to the extraordinary. We make provocative objects and films from this expedition work, exploring the dispersed narratives that coalesce to form a contemporary city.
So our cities are these extraordinary constellations of products, goods, and technologies. And from the smallest and most inconsequential of objects to the most intricate and complex, these material things set in motion this vast, planetary-scaled infrastructure. In Unknown Fields, we're interested in this idea that the city casts shadows that stretch far and wide.
So tonight we're going to tell 6 tales from the dark side of the city. The stories form a road trip through a reimagined city that stretches across the earth. It's a portrait of a place that sits between documentary and fiction, a city of fragments, of drone footage and hidden camera investigations, of interviews and speculative narratives of toxic objects, reimagined landscapes, and distributed matter from distant sites. The dark side of the city is a collection of stories from the constellation of elsewheres that are conjured into being by the city's wants and needs, and by its fears and its dreams.
So across the last 8 years, Unknown Fields have undertaken 13 expeditions through the distributed territories that lie behind the scenes of the contemporary city. So this exhibition film we're now watching is a kind of road movie that constructs this notional journey from the point of sale to the hole in the ground, a journey stitched together using footage from all the places that Unknown Fields have visited over the last few years. So the 6 stories we're going to tell tonight are station points from along this road movie. They're kind of tales that are pulled out of the book that create this portrait of what we describe as the dark side of the city.
So that film is actually showing next door, so we're not going to show you the whole film. You can watch it just over the corridor over there.
So we're going to pick up the journey on board one of the mega container ships of China in a story we call A World Adrift. So in a world of bytes and bitcoins, cyberspace and clouds, 90% of the world's cargo still arrives to us by ship. It's not beamed or teleported or conjured into existence, but it's dragged to us across the planet in heaving steel megaships with gizzards filled with glistening gadgets and gizmos from distant lands. So we're interested in Unknown Fields that the secret life of objects spans this kind of notional factory floor that reaches from the high street pound shop all the way through the resource fields of the Far East. And we traveled to China and beyond to trace the shadows of the world's desires across these seas and along the supply chain and cargo routes, to explore the dispersed choreographies and atomized geographies that global sea trade brings into being. So this is shot from the bow of one of the Maersk megaships, one of 6 that we caught on this journey, a time-lapse image of this extraordinary supply chain. And these are the first contours of our distributed city that are stretched around the earth from the hole in the ground to the high street self.
So our journey through East Asia marked a cross-section of this supply chain. From source to sea, we followed the routes of this and that, of bits and bobs and thingamajigs. It's been just over 45 years since the Apollo moon landings, and some would have it that we are failing to build big anymore. Stand on the bridge of a container ship docked in a megaport in Korea, however, and it's clear that that's just not true. 5,000 ships make up the global container ship fleet. 3.6 million containers are in motion worldwide at any one time.
So the surfaces of our planet's oceans for centuries have been this place of mystery or mythology. There have been expanses and desolated landscapes, but now they're beginning to be rationalized. So once an enigmatic, awe-inspiring place, the sea has become this strange new zone of efficiency. It's little more now than just another channel for the automated supply chain network. So the captain of our ship tells us that years ago, the sea he used to travel was once filled with phosphorescent algae and other wildlife, algae that would glow when the waters they cut through were disturbed.
We would leave this luminous green trail behind us in the water as the motors churned up the algae, he says. Toilets are flush with seawater, and you could turn the lights off in the bathroom and flush the loo and the whole room would glow neon green.
So nobody on these ships actually knows what's inside the containers that the ship carries. The ship captain and the portside crane operators have also been made obsolete, and now they stand as just these strange passengers in the machine. Their bodies have been repurposed as just a component in the landscape-scaled robot that stacks the containers ready for transport, bringing all of our goods all the way home.
This ship is called the New Dream. It's almost finished, one of the workers tells us. We use GPS-guided cranes to move the large sections of ship in the assembly process. We then weld the sections together by hand. These are some of the largest handcrafted objects in human history. Every welder signs his weld, so if there's a flaw, we can trace it back to who did it. Every component of the ship has the signatures of those who made it hidden under the paint.
So before objects set sail for our stores, they're brought and sold and traded in these vast halls of the Yiwu International Trade City, a wholesale market the size of a city. So this wholesale city consists of 80,000 shops, all identically sized, 2.5 meters by 2.5 meter cubes, containing some 10 million products that are stretched across 10 square kilometers.
Sorry, we can't do it, a market trader says. My minimum order is 100,000. Every one of us owns something that's passed through the wholesale city. The little items that fill your desk drawers, the free pens a salesman give you, and the toys your children break or forget. It's the hundreds of disposable products that fill 99-cent stores and gas stations. It's the stuff you buy on impulse, or because it's momentarily funny, and all because it's cheap. We understand who we are through the trail of objects we leave behind. Christmas is made in Yiwu. More than 60% of the world's Christmas decorations are here. That tree lighting up your lounge, those decorations hanging from the ceiling, that novelty stocking filler you bought for your child is all made here.
So if Yiwu makes Christmas, then Shenzhen makes all of our tronics. Some 90% of the world electronics, actually. And these are the human machines of the production line that make them, that are all choreographed by efficiency algorithms, where their bodies are matched in speed to the conveyor belts that turn in front of them. So these are the real robots of our cities of technology. And in this context, we can start to imagine that what if we redesigned our gadgets, not based on how they might slide into our pockets or feel in our hands, but for the networks they set in motion or the economic resources they might distribute? What could the alternative design criteria be for the supply chain if it wasn't engineered around cheap labor costs and resource availability?
As we follow the technology, we arrive at a village organized around metals and hardware components. The inhabitants of Giyu collect the e-waste in their houses. It surrounds their living, sleeping, and eating spaces, mining their domestic landscapes for lead, germanium, gallium, tin, nickel, and copper. Next to the pot of noodles simmers the acid bath, dissolving circuit wafers, separating metals and flavoring soup.
And finally, we arrive at the shores of the 10 square kilometer mine tailings waste lake that's filled with a cocktail of acids and heavy metals and carcinogens and radioactive material roughly 3 times background radiation. So China produces over 95% of the world's rare earths, and 2/3 of this are in a city called Baotou in Inner Mongolia. So this is some of the first footage of the toxic waste that sits beside the world's largest rare earth mineral refinery. And here we take a selfie with our phones, and we see our reflection in the mirrored screen, because the material to polish its glass and all of the glass of our phones and our laptops comes from this very lake. And collapsed together in this single luminous surface, we see ourselves and this black, black earth. And in this context, we browned our technologies with terms like the cloud, air, or featherweight, but in reality, they're violently wrenched from the earth. And as our personal electronics tend towards the invisible, they conjure in their shadows an undeniably visible grey mountain, a 1 kilometer deep pit, a 10-kilometer radioactive tailings lake, and a counterweight to the apparent immateriality of computing, communications, and electrical energy.
So from this black sludge, we made a set of vases made from the amount of waste created in the production of 3 objects: an iPhone, a MacBook, and a Tesla electric battery cell from an electric car. It's a new material aesthetic for these technologies that are born from the earth. These 3 rare earthenware vessels are the physical embodiment of a contemporary global supply network that displaces Earth and weaves matter across the planet. And they represent the undesirable consequences of our material desires. In silhouette, they echo the highly valuable Ming Dynasty porcelain vases. Ming vases being particularly iconic objects of high value, as well as being artifacts of international trade. A one-family global superpower, the Ming Dynasty, presided over an international network of connections, trade, and diplomacy.
And in this first part of our journey tonight, we've followed the unmaking of these objects of technology. We reversed their journey from container ships and ports, through wholesalers and factory floors, all the way back to the banks of the barely liquid radioactive lake in Inner Mongolia that is continually pumped with tailings from the rare earth refining process. In a way, the unmaking of our technologies is the making of these vases, carefully crafted from their toxic byproducts.
Treasured Island. In Treasured Island, Unknown Fields travels through Madagascar to catalogue the push and pull of economy and ecology and meet the illegal traders of the world's luxury brands. One of the planet's most precious ecological treasures is home to one of its poorest nations, and it raises difficult questions and complex questions about the relationship between necessity and luxury. Hidden amidst political uncertainty, the island's fragile and unique ecology is being smuggled out illegally, boat by boat, gem by gem. Rare tortoises leave in rucksacks, forests are carved into million-dollar rosewood beds to be sold in China, and precious stones are shoveled from the earth and smuggled onto the stage in pop star bling.
And as the beat drops and the stage lights strobe, a pop star flashes their designer bling for the camera in a flurry of choreographed dance moves. And here, another world away, in a hole in the ground in the wild west town of Ilikaka, Madagascar, another choreography of bodies moves in rhythm to dig dirt by hand out of a gemstone mine. So some 90% of the world's sapphires are pulled out of the ground by the human conveyor belts of Madagascar's gem fields. For such a remote island, it contains this extraordinary amount of high-value resources. And precious gems were deposited here by an ancient river that once flowed across Africa before a tectonic shift ripped it from the mainland, forming the island of Madagascar. And the stones collected in pockets along the twists and turns of this riverbed, resting patiently beneath 20 meters of sand and the future boomtown of Ilikaka. We dig holes to try and find the river again.
That's the voice of Mark Navera, one of the major players in present-day Ilikaka, one of the only Europeans in town. He moved here 18 years ago, chasing the stones and hunting his fortune. He's the anonymous face reflected in every piece of jewelry you own.
I like stone better than humans. I like stone better than money.
In 1999, he drove into Ilikaka to live in a tent and watch the place explode. When he first arrived there was only one building here, and now the landscape is overrun with almost 100,000 miners. There's only one road in or out, and it's lined with gem shops and sweaty men with guns on their hips.
I finance the pit. Here in Ilikaka, the land is free, and all you need to mine is a local arrangement with the chiefs and elders. There is no government here. There is nothing. There is thousands of people, but this is also the most lonely place in Madagascar.
So this is a landscape produced from unregulated desires. If you want to mine with machines, you need a formal contract and money for fuel and maintenance.
To dig with people, you don't need anything, just a bag of rice.
Each worker gets $2 a day to work in the mines and 50 grams of rice. And with that, 1 cubic meter of earth equals 1 gram of gemstones. Here it's cheaper to pay workers in rice than it is to buy and maintain mechanical mining equipment. The 20 men of his Swiss bank mine shovel dirt in perfect synchronization, each paid with 50 grams of rice, their bodies repurposed as machines. This mine took 12 years to dig by hand. Here their movements are traced like the early photography studies of Frank Gilbreth. He was mapping the choreographies of the production line, looking to optimize every movement, constrain every motion, with the elegance of a tuned engine. The digger is a robot, just one component in a gemstone conveyor belt, 2,880 shovels per day, 5.76 tons per day.
This is my hole, says one of the miners. I started digging 4 years ago. Every hole here was made by our hands. If you're lucky, you find a good sapphire and you have a good life. With no luck, you die, or you grow old digging holes. And when we find a stone, we all take it above ground and go together to the Sri Lankans to sell it and split the money. We don't know what happens to them or to the stones. We don't know how much money they sell them for. The money never comes back to us.
Everyone else with money in this town is Sri Lankan. The cultural relationship to sapphires runs deep in Sri Lanka, embedded within the traditional Sri Lankan sapphires. They sell at much better price than Madagascan stones. If rough, unpolished stones can be smuggled out of the country and back to Sri Lanka, they can be refined and sold on an extraordinary markup. At 6 p.m., the single-street town comes alive. As miners return from the field for a treacherous 2-hour negotiation for the sale of the day's pickings, they crowd around the tiny grilled windows that line the street and watch as a Sri Lankan inside sorts through their finds. The street is washed with the focused light of 100 tiny gem torches, shining through stones, looking for imperfections and inclusions, anything to drop the price.
We find ways to send rough stones out of the country. If I find a good stone, I fly back to Switzerland to get a certificate on which I can nominate the origin of the stone. I make much more money if I say I got it from Sri Lanka.
We can only imagine planes full of buyers lifting off from this treasured island, their shoes, their jacket linings full of shimmering deep blue jewels.
We're not a city. We have no name, no mayor, no bank, no map.
A hidden black market supply chain connects these two choreographies. From lawless mine sites to the jewelry stores, hip-hop music videos and celebrity red carpets across the ocean. Material production and cultural production have never been separate.
$1,000 like that.
You have a big smile on your face.
Yeah. Always have everything, bribery, murder, too much here.
You like it?
Yeah, I like this country. I love this country.
Unknown Fields has used the amount of rice the human conveyor belt consumes in a day to manufacture a precious stone that embodies the systems through which these worlds are intimately and profoundly connected.
The red Madagascan rice grown endemically on this treasured island is a staple food of the miners and has been collected locally and shipped to these gem specialists for carbon analysis. By subjecting the rice to extreme heat and pressure in the lab, Unknown Fields have formed a synthetic stone encoded with the sum of the human belt's labor. After manufacture, the gemstone has been set into a gold tooth, ready for that $1 million smile and the outrageous lyric. So from kilojoules to carats to the nightclub, in the glare of the cheeky gold grin, we see the cost of luxury, of beauty, of a daily allowance of rice, of 20 men shoveling at the bottom of a hole.
Nice. Show that stone on.
It glistens in the light, and mirrored in the facets of the rice diamond, we also see ourselves.
Never Never Lands. To chronicle the creation stories of the city, Unknown Fields heads off on a dust-blown road trip across Australia into the vast and mysterious interior of this remote island continent in search of its ancient tribal hinterlands and its immense techno landscapes. Beneath the Southern Cross, machines harvest the earth for the precious ingredients of our daily lives. We stalk mechanical beasts the size of buildings and explore excavations the size of cities. Here in the Never Never are the resource territories of the city, a land of rich geology, endless horizons, and mining pits so large they generate their own weather systems. Towering mountains of tailings, remade landforms, terraced valleys and artificial lakes all take shape from this distributed ground.
For this story, Unknown Fields travel 1 kilometer beneath the surface of the earth in search of gold, to survey the laser scan the technological incisions that release it from the ground. And we follow tunnels winding below Australia's red crust and stand at the base of the megapits that are cut through the narrative landscape of the Dreamtime, the creation stories and mythology of Aboriginal Australians. And territories once mapped into surfaces of Aboriginal dot paintings are now depicted on screen in the digital point clouds of geological survey scans. And we retrace a constellation of gold artifacts that are scattered across the earth, back through mining pits and tunnels, all the way to their origin in ore bodies deep below the surface. Roughly 0.034 grams of this landscape is locked away in each of our mobile phones, charged and quietly vibrating. We each carry a little piece of Australia in our pockets.
Our city of gold casts a long shadow across the earth. Here lies a silent twin, a void where landform once was. An ancient landscape scattered and redistributed, remade into bullion in a vault, a grandmother's ring, a gangster's tooth. Electrical connections, a gold-plated revolver, a haul of Roman coins in a museum, or gold flakes in a shot glass. From the ground comes a catalogue of gold objects. Every object leaves a trace, and the fluctuations of the gold price in the market sends ripples through the earth. The territories of Australia become atomized into a constellation of glistening things scattered around the world. the dust of Australia blows gold.
Forged from the ancient supercontinent of the ground of Western Australia is formed from some of the oldest rocks on the planet. Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives speak of a time when the ground was soft and creation beings shaped mountains and rivers. And when the rainbow serpent once slinked across the ground to create a river, or a wild dog came to rest to form a mountain. And now, as the lights of the city wash out the sky, the songlines walked by these ancient ancestral spirits are sung anew, with the tracks laid down by the beasts of the mining industry. And here, as the explosive diggers and drills replace the slow erosion of rivers and winds, new stories are now being told.
The dreaming landscape that embodies the creation stories of the Aboriginal Australians is overlaid with a vast infrastructure of resource speculation and financial fiction. Geological survey planes track back and forth, laser scanning the earth, searching for topographic anomalies that indicate pockets of undiscovered minerals in the ground. The millions of points created by their scans are examined to determine territories for core sampling. These, in turn, give form to subterranean outcrops in digital models, indicating features and landmarks, bands and shards of material riches under the dry desert earth.
Aboriginal native title rights apply to the surface of the earth, but exclude the valuable subsurface minerals which all belong now to the state. And no one is yet singing the creation stories of the ore body formations below ground. They're these voids in waiting, fragments of a country destined to be taken away, train by train, ship by ship. And traditional dot paintings of Dreamtime stories have often been used to support land rights claims, but now the dots of the point cloud data force a different type of claim on this landscape. The technologies with which the ground is surveyed, depicted, and recorded also now become the means through which we might claim ownership over it.
So, constructed from 3D laser scans, underground mine models, and aerial survey data, this point cloud animation takes us on a subterranean journey. It's a worm's eye view of the ore body's open pits and tunnel excavations of the gold mines of Western Australia. The images recontextualize the data from economic assessments of these landscapes within the narrative of an alternative cultural reading. Underneath our feet lies an inverted landscape of glistening, mineral-laden earth and dormant nuggets, destined to take the form of the city's desires. So this is a story about a material valued above all others, but there exists a parallel story about the value of this landscape untouched.
So one of the principal uses of gold is as an investment instrument, a proxy for accumulated wealth, a kind of high-stakes version of sticking cash underneath a mattress. And much of the gold extracted from this ancient ground is done so purely so it can be quantified and weighed. It's then shipped across the world from one hole in the ground to another and stored below the surface once more in another vault, perhaps of HSBC or the Federal Reserve. And here it remains under the earth to be traded virtually. And the gold price is culturally constructed as a value system. It's a financial fiction embodied in the block of material which has been wrung like blood from a stone. And 2 grams from a ton of earth is the average yield from this red earth.
So in the cool calculations of the digital mine model, the shape of the excavation changes as the variable gold price is entered into the software. So as the gold price rises, it becomes more economical to mine areas of lower gold ore concentration. The model reveals the various grades of a single gold ore body in grams per ton. So as the price drops, the virtual mine shrinks as the software focuses around deposits richer in gold ore. So one cut at a time, the fluctuations of the gold price are etched into the ground of Western Australia, forging deep underground caverns and open pit excavations, the scale of the Grand Canyon. That steamy black void, which we once stood in, is actually a live graph shaped by the frequency of electronic trades in London and New York. And from such distances, it's amazing that we can so dramatically affect a landscape that doesn't belong to us.
So Unknown Fields have built a domestic mining machine with a data connection to the precious metals market. It's a numbers game that carves mountains across the other side of the world, but it's now brought home to live with us in more familiar territories. It's live linked to the gold price as it trades $13.02, $13.20, $13.40 per ounce. Tracking its percentage rise and fall, the miner now carves into the everyday landscapes of our own domestic spaces. The abstractions of buying and selling play out in our comfortable and mundane spaces, excavating our domestic landscapes.
So if the financial foundations of the lives we lead and the things that we own are propped up on investment commodities and the fluctuating values assigned to them, this abstract stream of numbers and the distant landscapes they carve are both obscure alien realms to us. You sit at your kitchen table, it mines, the price rises. Your world is excavated as you sip your coffee, as you read the morning papers. It mines as you sleep, as you take a bath, as you watch TV. What was once out of sight, lost to distance, just a sacrificial territory in a place we'll never visit, now brought home, screeching and drilling into the cities and spaces we know so well.
The landscape of Australia is both everywhere and nowhere. And here, in the red ochre, the never never, we are carving our desires into your archaeological record, a new creation story for our endless city. Snowing in the supercomputer. So to locate the environmental forecasts and data landscapes of the unknown Fields city, the studio travels to Alaska's far north to visit a territory that sits in the collective imagination as one of the last remaining wildernesses. So here, climate change is not a condition that's going to play out in a possible future, but it's a phenomenon that's unfolding across real time. Whale migration patterns are already shifting and coastlines are disappearing, and the ice is melting. And Unknown Fields spend the winter solstice with the climate scientists from around the world who are camped out in the most northern cities on the planet, collecting data that's then fed into climate modeling supercomputers and environmental policies further south.
So this is the sound of the supercomputer. It's the white noise of millions of calculations per second. From the oracles and augurs of the ancients to the predictive modeling of modern digital prophets, through the ages, both wise men and charlatans have claimed to see into the future. And cultures differ in their concept of time and in their attitudes towards the future, which are central to these acts of prediction. Alaskan Inuit, for instance, informed by ancestral memories of their environment and its patterns, embrace the uncertainties of the future with a deep belief in their own ability to adapt. And meanwhile, the world's environmental scientists attempt to assemble their observations into climate models in order to predict the future as precisely as possible. Caught between improvisation and premeditation, these cultural relationships with landscape and time will define the future of the North and in turn the cities beyond. This story peers inside the supercomputer to find a set of surreal landscapes, ones that sit between tradition and technology, the real and imagined, the future and the present.
They're landscapes generated by native Alaskan authors and poets, and generated at the same time from the climate data and modeling software of supercomputer scientists. And against these images run panoramas of the supercomputer infrastructure that simulates them and the doomsday statistics that are shouted to us every day, but that we do our best to ignore. So traditional data visualizations and guilt-laden headlines are no longer sufficient strategies to encourage the cultural and ideological shift that was required. And Unknown Fields crack open the black box to pull out the landscapes the supercomputer is predicting and imbue them with new kinds of narratives. The indigenous poetry is an alternative mythology for an ever-melting landscape of fear and of hope. They're panoramas that are dramatizations of data, portraits of a world that we've already lost or one we are yet to find.
Gentle being, how do you float across the ice to me? You somehow know my heart's become overheated, that I churn, my own friction burning me up. I can only stand here on the edge again and look, wait, yearn. Fog rises. Strong being, you leap from pan to pan, something a child could do if we'd ever let one anymore. Somehow you know I need your courage. Over and over again, I try to breathe you in.
So these are all poems by native Alaskan writer Priscilla Hensley. And the pink clouds floating above the ice field was a particle simulation produced from a global carbon emissions dataset.
In the morning there came a new bird's call. It seemed louder than all the others, either because it stood out or because the other birds were shocked into near silence. What is it saying? Where is it from? And perhaps more importantly, are there others on the way?
The texturing on the iceberg is generated from the translation of projected global temperature rise datasets into a three-dimensional noise map. And here, the waveforms of a soundscape generated by running a Fairbanks supercomputer data tape through a reel-to-reel player have been used to form a layer of cirrus clouds above the churning ocean.
I've heard people say they've forgotten more than they know. We're standing here on an edge with it all falling towards and away at the same time, feeling so much like it's all just there on the other side. Not enough falling through will we catch. My blind eyes and dampened ears will never know, and so much is gone, gone.
I have no idea where they're from. I really don't. I don't believe it's from our solar system. You know, my thinking is that they're watching us because they may have gone through what we're going through. We're a war people, the humans. We are the only species that can't get along with each other. Why would they want to communicate with us unless they're watching to make sure we don't self-destruct?
To chart the black sites of Unknown Fields City, the studio commandeers an old school bus and heads off on a reconnaissance road trip from Roswell to Area 51 to chronicle a series of aerial encounters from the borderlands of military outposts and the crater-pocked, fenced-off folkloric landscapes of the United States. So the militarized landscapes which defend this endless city are hidden behind barbed wire, within inhospitable terrain, or beneath the low-resolution distortions of doctored satellite images.
These concealed territories are our city walls and fortifications. But beyond their physical might, they're sites of psychological warfare, where rumour begins. Rumbling along UFO highways, past the mythic ground of Area 51, we explore territories of negotiation and conflict, zones of transgression, suspicion, and speculation. Here, as tall tales of conspiracy theories and alien abductees mix with sonic booms crackling in the quiet desert air, we examine the mysteries and conspiracies that surround what lies off the map, off-grid and below the radar, proposing some new truths and exposing some alternate fictions.
The High Strange is an illustrated story that's developed in response to the material Unknown Fields collected and the text written along this journey. So all dialogue for the novel is taken from real interviews conducted with whistleblowers, UFO researchers, local characters, and military personnel. And collaged material is gathered en route from declassified dossiers, alien enthusiast bookstores, roadside gift shops, and New Age media.
Unknown Fields embedded graphic novelist Christian Donaldson operated on tour like a courtroom illustrator to visualize the conversations, sightings, and the first-hand accounts from the field. High Strange is a new conspiracy theory stitched together from the stories unearthed in the shadowlands of the United States. And it's a portrait of a landscape as a factory of fictions, a form of weaponized folklore, if you like. A territory that can only be understood by examining the stories that the world tells about it.
Cross that boundary, no do-overs, no second chances. You get arrested, they'll detain you with one of these guys guarding you in handcuffs, probably laying face down in the dirt, but you're gonna spend the night in jail. It's not a pleasant experience from what I'm told. We're all being filmed now. So you screw up, they got video evidence. So don't mess up. It'll be an ugly weekend for you. If you stop and think of the technology that we have had in the last 50 years, and we can't go there. But if they can come here, their technology and knowledge is so far advanced of us, they may be 100, 1,000, they may be 10,000 years ahead of us. Right now we're on U.S. government property where we're allowed to be. Just in front of these signs is the boundary. And if you take a look up on the hill, there's remote cameras, 2 of them. I see one of them at least is pointing at us, one's looking down the road. And they're transmitted to the base at Area 51 to their main security headquarters. That's in effect how they knew we were coming. They knew a long time before we got out here. But it's hard to tell you other than just keep looking up there, and then satellites go over, you'll see them, and it's hard to see it. But the speed that they travel and the maneuvering they do is what gets your attention. They make a right turn without any pause. They just do it, or they go back and forth. And they come in and they go out. You'll see them and then you won't see them.
I think it's some sort of remotely piloted drone that has some sort of anti-mag capabilities. There was no visible thrusters, there was no contrail, there was no indication at all how that thing was being kept up in the air and how it was being powered. So, but I assume that our government has technological know-how that is light years beyond what they admit publicly, probably 15 to 20 years beyond its operation right now.
Some guy asked me one morning when I was getting ready to go into the inn and have breakfast, and he said he had a real nice notebook, beautiful, almost calligraphy type of printing. It was gorgeous handwriting. And he said, "Let me ask you something." And I said, "Sure, go ahead," you know, and I'm a little bit leery. And he said, "Have you seen one of these?" And he's got all this writing down below it, and it was a gorgeous, artistic profile of a UFO. And I mean, it was elaborate, okay? And he said, have you seen one of these? And I went, no. And do you live here? No. Yeah. So he said, well, I saw one last night up on the hill. So that's some of the stuff we run into.
Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky, Arizona, was abducted. He was a lumberjack. He worked out in the forest with 5 or 6 other guys. At the end of the day, they were driving back to town. It was dark. They saw a bright light in the forest. Travis made the mistake of getting out of the truck.
Telling them that back in the 70s, he flew this UFO. And he was dead serious. And he's a smart guy. I know him. And maybe a little bit too many Jim Baines. And he was telling me, he said it was, and this gal said, well, was it hard to fly? And he goes, no, it's a mind integration something or other. I mean, he had this elaborate term. And I couldn't stand it anymore. I just said, what in the hell have you been smoking? I want some. So you don't know what to believe, except your own eyes, and then I don't even believe my own eyes all the time.
How long were dinosaurs around? 300 million years? How do we know in the last million years that dinosaurs didn't evolve and become sentient and spacefaring? And they knew an asteroid was coming, and so they left. Or they went underground to save themselves. And now all these evil reptoids are actually evolved dinosaurs reclaiming Earth from us primates. Makes more sense to me than some reptoids coming all the way from Draconius to rape jazz singers in LA.
Unknown Fields chronicle the electric landscapes of the city, investigating the infrastructures that serve as energy conduits, translating matter like a luminous language from the hole in the ground to the glow of our phones. This fiction, Our Future is Powered from the Breast Milk of Mountains, is actually an account of a new creation story for our energy, from the Big Bang to the battery, from the birth of lithium at the beginning of the universe to the low power warning flashing on our screens. We power our future with the breast milk of volcanoes.
13.8 billion years. In the beginning of the beginning, seconds from zero, 13.8 billion years ago, the creation story of lithium begins in a big bang. It was there at the dawn of time alongside helium and hydrogen. Lithium, just one of only 3 elements able to claim their ultimate origin in that hot, dense primordial gas. And light is the only detectable record that's left of the Big Bang. It's the ghost of lithium's creation. At 5 kilometers above sea level, on the Chajnantor Plateau in the Chilean Atacama Desert, the landscape has eyes. 66 white pupils turn in unison to search the thin air of these dark skies. Here, the astrophysicists at Atacama's Large Millimeter Array Observatory are focused skyward, traveling deep through the dark interstellar clouds of the coldest, oldest parts of the universe.
And at the same time, another community of nomadic shepherds, the indigenous Licante people, used their own land and trekked across the grounds where the antennas now stand. And on the Chajnantor Plateau, all eyes have been on the shadows in the sky. and silhouetted against the light of the Milky Way, the dark clouds that Alma observe are the same shadow constellations of indigenous mythology, and dancing within a swathe of interstellar clouds that forge lithium is Yankana and her llama, and these creatures trampled lithium from the beginning of time to the crust of the earth.
4.6 billion years ago, as Yankana drank from the sky, the wreckage of an exploding supernova slowly began to condense into our planet. In this vast cloud of swirling cosmic matter, gravity and violent collapse gave shape to the sphere of the Earth and embedded within it the traces of lithium. Lithium comprises 7 parts per million of the planet's crust, locked in the ground, waiting for release.
10,000 years ago, a series of lakes formed high on the Andean plateau where Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, the 3 countries of the lithium triangle, now meet. And here lies the largest salt lake on the planet, containing at least 50% of the world's lithium reserves. And the salt lake was once a vast plain where the Incan giants lived, and among them was the beautiful Tunapa. And she chose to marry Cuzco, a strange young man, and they had a son called Calicatan, who was soon born of their union. And while away on one of his trade journeys, he became infatuated with a pretty young woman, and they ran off together, never to return. And the gods, they tired of these giants' lies and secrecy and betrayal, and they decided to punish them, and they petrified them and formed them as mountains. And Tunapa began to cry, a volcano spewing ash and rock from the depths of the planet, rich in light elements like magnesium, potassium, boron, and lithium. And while the tears rolled down her cheeks, her breasts began to lose the milk that her son had not suckled. And millennia of meltwater from the snow-capped peaks of her mountain seeped down through her rocky sides, leaching minerals into the lake below. And as the giants became volcanoes, Tunapa's tears ran into the subterranean brine, and her milk crystallized as the crusty salt skin that now stretches endlessly across this bright white plateau.
This charged landscape, this electric Earth, remote and unforgiving, is now quantified for its energy potential. Cities, industries, and infrastructure will feed at the shores of this ancient lake, playing out an electric future. The future of green energy is the tears and milk of a mother mountain. 20 years. It was a little over 20 years ago that lithium erupted again at the Salar de Uyuni. A Belgian company found the ground too soft for construction, but inadvertently had cracked open the earth to reveal lithium-rich brine underneath. 100 million tons of Tunapa's forgotten tears are now estimated to be trapped here. Without the knowledge and assistance of foreign companies, it's taken over 20 years, but now Bolivia is ready and the Salar is soon to be industrialized. This natural wonder has become the most lucrative of investments, casting Bolivia as the Saudi Arabia of the electric age.
"15 months. You cannot see it on the desperately flat horizon or access it by any public road. Its mystery is protected by its isolation. But lithium development is not mining through extraction, but through a kind of evaporation. A tessellated ocean of evaporation ponds where each shift in hue signals a rising concentration of lithium salts. And the shores of the Metal Sea begin at pond number 15, where 0.2% of lithium, the least concentrated, is sitting within azure blue waters with a sodium chloride beach. And each month, the ponds are drained and transferred to the next in line. And each month, the color changes and the lithium gets richer. And across 15 months, the sea migrates through the holding ponds of the Salar until it reaches the deep coffee waters of pond number 1, 6% lithium sulfate. And what is left behind is a massive quantity of table salt, which is piled up beside the lithium ocean, and gradually a new mother mountain grows. And what will we call her, this crystal volcano? A totem for a sacrificial sea, evaporating to keep the screens glowing and the wheels turning.
This sea that has been slowly evolving across billions of years is now ready to leave the land of the giants forever. Sucked up by a convoy of 18-wheelers and driven off to a lithium carbonate factory to be processed into batteries.
As it gently vibrates across the earth, the iPhone can travel 14 hours on its 1800 milliamp lithium polymer battery before it comes to rest. It feels warm to the touch, and we are told stories about its lightness and its slim lines. Reflected in its pristine polished glass is the mirrored expanse of the crystal white salt lake from which it has been wrenched. And in ludicrous mode, the 7,000 lithium nickel cobalt aluminium oxide cells of the 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack that sits in the belly of the newly born Tesla P90D delivers enough power to accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds. 20 to 30 kilograms of lithium are at the core of each electric car. And as this glistening beast shrieks down the tarmac, it sends ripples across the turquoise pools of lithium brine. It's a hunter stalking the electric future.
3 electrons orbit the lithium nucleus. Our story began with the travels of stars, and it ends with these tiny revolving planets just waiting for a charge. Unknown Fields built a glass battery, a mythic love story that trickle charges a phone. While the world does its best to ignore that technology is forged from the earth, with marketing campaigns of ephemeral clouds and the relentless push for the smallest and the lightest, this battery object embodies the story of the landscape in which it was made. A mass of alternating aluminium and graphite anode and cathode, submerged in a lithium brine electrolyte collected from Bolivia's electric Salar de Uyuni, creates a slow reaction, the drip charge of a weeping volcano. The creation myth of this landscape is told again and again as the electrons flow. The flash of the Big Bang to the flash of an electron. Our future is powered by the breast milk of volcanoes. The city casts shadows that stretch far and wide.
Thanks.
Thank you.